Haris, are you with us?
Yeah, good afternoon, good morning,
So
depending
we, I
where are
guess,
you guys listening from?
I guess you're back in Europe. So Haris is reporting from Germany right now. He is Microsoft Regional Director and Microsoft MVP, and he's one of the co-founders of the Collaboration Summit. And very soon we will have something we call Galactic Edition of Collaboration Summit, which will be a online event in June, and we will be able to learn more about Microsoft 365.
Well, it was either calling it Galactic or Corona Collaboration Summit, and we preferred Galactic.
Yeah, I guess this impacted all of us around the globe with these changes where we really had to stay at home. Aris, if you are ready, you can roll up your session and start.
Yep, we should be starting like in 2 minutes. Let me share the screen and warm up until then. If anybody knows any good jokes, feel free to start. Right, we will be talking today about Teams. So Vander, we've been talking about Teams the whole day. So let's do another session on Teams. We are going to talk about external users in Teams and how we can work with external users, how we can enable them to work, how can we manage those external users, and how can we also perform some controlling and auditing on what they are doing within Microsoft Teams. So, enabling, managing, and controlling external and guest access in Microsoft Teams is the title of the session we are talking about now. Very shortly about me, even if Tony has presented me much nicer than I could ever present myself. Thank you, Tony. Basically, Microsoft MVP for what was used to be called SharePoint after 7 renaming of that award. We are now called the Microsoft MVP for Office Apps and Services. Since I also work quite some with Microsoft Azure, I'm also Microsoft MVP for Azure. And I'm Microsoft Regional Director. Basically, the difference between MVP and Regional Directors is that regional directors are working more closely with the team in Redmond. For way too long in this industry, I still hope sometimes to get rid of all of this and open a restaurant. Tony knows of that vision of mine. Will happen.
Now
In the
it's not a
meantime,
good time to do that. Good thing you're in IT this year.
Yeah, let's remain in IT at least for this year. Tony mentioned I'm one of the organizers of the European Collaboration Summit, one conference I actually started with Tony and with a few other guys. Still living and kicking. This year postponed for October, and we are crossing the finger that October will be fine. At least your German numbers look pretty good right now, so we are optimistic. But then again, it's this year does not really comes out as we are planning it. Since it was fun, and we said why only Microsoft 365, we have started also a parallel conference Cloud Summit focused on Azure, which will also hopefully happen in October. Living in Germany, born in Sarajevo, still doing some blogging from time to time and stuff. Right. This is 2 obligatory slides about Collab Summit, and Tony mentioned the Galactic Summit, which we are doing on the original dates in June, where we really have a stellar speaker lineup. This is just the few top speakers we called, including Jeff Pepper, Donna Sarkar, Dan Holm, Lori Pottmeyer, Vesa Juvonen, Martina Grom, Mike Fitz, and all the other rock stars will be there. 3,000 people until now have registered, so let's see how much of them really turn out. So whoever wants to join us in June, that will be on 2nd and 9th of June, 2 days with 1 week in between at www.collabsummit.space. Right, now let's go talk about what we actually wanted to talk about here, and that's external access and guest access in Microsoft Teams. Not only in Teams, this is basically valid for the large parts of Microsoft 365, but we will look at it today at the focus from Teams. One of the first things that a lot of people are getting confused with the differences, it's sometimes used like external access and sometimes guest access. Those are actually 2 very different things in context of Teams. So if you know about Teams and you know how the users work to the Azure Active Directory and how this all works, you still know that you can call a user, even if that user is not in my Azure Active Directory. So I can use my Teams to call Eva, to call Tony, to call Todd, regardless that they are not in my Azure Active Directory. This is what we see on the left side, what we call external access. So me, who am in and I am in tenant A, I can call users who are either in Microsoft 365 tenant B or in Skype for Business. So somebody who still does not yet, who still does not have Teams, or is not even online. We can speak here about Skype for Business on-premises installation, or even a Skype consumer user. This feature just went out of the preview a few weeks or months ago. Relatively new feature, but it's GA, it's out of the preview in the meantime. So this is relatively straightforward. It's federations on across Microsoft 365 tenants per default. You can shut it down or change it. We are going to take a look at that shortly. But basically, you can call anybody or chat with anybody there. Guest access is basically giving access to the resources in your tenant to another users. So basically, you are inviting those users to be guests at your tenant. We see here on the left side that when we speak about external access, we can basically only chat and talk, make voice calls. With guest access, we can do way more. We can chat, we can make voice calls, but we can also collaborate on files. We can share to-do lists and a lot of other task lists and a lot of other stuff we can do there. Who are the users who are coming to our tenant? Traditionally, it has either been users from another tenants, as we have down there, tenant B, or Microsoft accounts, which we used to call live accounts or different other names through the history. Recently, I think it's less than a month ago or maybe 2 months ago, Microsoft has added, and we are going to see that also Google accounts to the federation to be a part, to be guests in your tenant. So for the moment, 3 straightforward supported scenarios are either AAD accounts, Microsoft accounts, or Google accounts. You can also, to the B2B scenarios, create other stuff if you would use SAML or AWS Fed. But let's leave that for now. If we take a look at external versus guest, from the approach, from what can they do, you see basically that we are not going to read this table, but you will get the slides later. You will see basically that if you are talking about external access, everything is around chatting and voice. So no other features. Whereas with guests, you have got way more yes answers on this other side, on the right side of the panel, which is a lot of about file sharing, collaboration, working together on files or plans, whatever. So how do I control the first thing, external access in Microsoft Teams? By default, it's turned on. The screenshot which you see here basically means give me federation with everyone. So I can basically call Tony, call Eva, call Todd, call Sue Hanley, call whomever I want. So let's shortly go out of this and open my Teams here. And one of the things here is in the Teams Admin Center, where I also have here guest access under the settings, and I can also invite other people here. So we have here external access, and we see that I have changed those settings a bit. Like I said, yes, you can call everyone except of people from domain IBM.com and people from domain Oracle.com. Why those two? Because they make bad software. We don't want to talk with people who are making bad software, so they are per default blocked on this tenant. As you see, and as you will see here, we have a very interesting situation here with different interfaces. We have here the Teams admin. We'll see the compliance center, security center, the old compliance center throughout this session. Sometimes it is all getting a bit confused in Microsoft background UI, in Microsoft administration UI. So I sometimes prefer using those things with PowerShell. you are going to be you will be getting those slides, as I said before, and I have always attached the small PowerShell snippets scripts which can help you get those information. So for this one, right, I am here my PowerShell. I will basically going to say get federation configuration, and I can also see directly from PowerShell which domains here are immediately blocked. So this is IBM.com and Oracle.com. If I use set command as opposed to this get one, I can actually also set those domains. So you see here I went this opposite way with the block domains. I could reverse the story and say give me only allowed domains. This is maybe in some situations where you want to be more restrictive and when you want to enable federation only with your partners or your customers, whatever, leaving everybody else aside. So much about external access. There is not too much to tell about it. Guest access is way more interesting in this scenario, but this is basically what you can control and create and how you can do that. So let's go back to the guest access. As we said here, the scenario here is that somebody is inviting guests from the other tenants or other authentication controls, in this case Microsoft account or Google account, to work with you and collaborate with you in your tenant. So guest users have quite some rights in your tenant when you give them, or they can have theoretically quite some rights. Depends on what permissions you are giving to them. Still, you see when we speak about teams, we can see that, for example, guest users can create channels if you give them the right to create channels. They can participate with private chats with you. They can participate in channel conversation and do all the other stuff there. What they cannot do are the operations which are tightly connected to the sheer fact that the guest users cannot have OneDrive in your tenant. So they can work with your SharePoint document library, so they can upload files there, otherwise the teams would not work basically for them, but they don't have their own OneDrive. So what does that mean to them? They cannot share files with you on one-to-one chats because those files are uploaded to your own OneDrive. Now, if you don't have OneDrive, there's nothing where you can upload that thing. So there are some limitations which are basically all about missing OneDrive functionality for them, but also they cannot add tabs or bots or this kind of stuff. This is really, I'm sorry, this is really left only for the team members, to the basically paid users from your account. And the things they cannot do are the administrative stuff, like they cannot create teams and this stuff which is more on the administration side. So one of the most common questions, I guess, a lot of you are getting, or at least I know I have answered at which time, how do you enable guest access in Microsoft Teams? Well, this is really very simple. As I'm going to show you, it's just a matter of opening Azure portal and selecting this thing first in the Azure portal. I'm going to to show you. To walk you shortly about this, and you're going to get this as a reference. So the first thing you need to do is you need to open your Azure portal, which you get with every Microsoft tenant, Microsoft 365 tenant, regardless if you have Azure subscription or not. I got here an Azure Active Directory subscription. I'm already in. Yeah, right. In the tenant, I'm opening Azure Active Directory, and here in organizational relationships, and here in settings. As you see, perfectly easy to find. I'm not being sarcastic here, not a little bit. You basically are setting who can invite guests and what guests privileges can we have there at all. This is basically the first step, enabling guests really just to be in the. This is basically the first switch you need to turn on to enable guest access at all in your tenant. The second switch, which you need to do there, is to go to the Office 365 groups control in the tenant admin, in Office 365 tenant administration portal. you are doing that here in the admin section of your Office 365, in show all, in settings, and somewhere there are Microsoft groups. There they are. You need to make sure that at least this one checkbox is turned on. Otherwise, they will not be able to access the content in the groups. They will maybe be able to be the members of the groups set to this Azure policy, to the Azure setting there, but they will not be able to access the content without this. The second checkbox basically tells you who can add those members in the groups. Does it have to be global admin, tenant admin, or can the group owners add guest members to the group, which should be the second one. So now, we would say that this is basically what we need to do. But there's a third thing which we need to do here with this one, and that is basically enabling the guest access in the teams. So once we do that, we basically need to go to the back to the teams, and we have here guest access. That's the next one. The first one was external, the second one is guest. We need to access the guest access in the teams. So now they can work, they can make private calls, they can send video, they can send GIFs or all the other stuff. So now we can say they can definitely work with the teams. Well, not really. The next one we need to make sure is basically what are SharePoint settings in our organization. Because even with teams, the organization level settings for SharePoint can be set on such a way that guest users cannot access SharePoint sites. And now, since SharePoint is in the background of all team collaboration settings, it would be a very weird effect that guest users can chat, can call, but cannot upload documents. And they will still see the upload icon, but when they try to icon, they will get a beautifully explained mistake like GUID whatever. So basically what you need to go here is you need to go to SharePoint Control Center, to sharing, and to make sure that basically the guest users can upload files and use files from SharePoint. So I think we are done now with that, right? Well, partly. The last one is on the team level. When you finally manage to add a user to the team, when you make sure that that user has some permissions on the SharePoint, necessary permission on the SharePoint, you need to make sure basically this user can also do some things in the teams that you would accept that user to do. And this case is basically to that they can create and update channels. So you basically want users to create channels in your teams most of the time, and the same is with delete. If you don't want your users to do that, then it's the right question: why do you want those users in that team at all? It's now a bit more organizational and philosophical question, but those are 5 places where you need to click some checkboxes for users to actually be able to open to do this stuff. Okay, why is it like this? Why does this? I've heard the word madness for this already. Why does this madness happen in this area? It's because of this hierarchical diagram. It's a very high level hierarchical diagram. There is much more to that, but in basically how it works on Microsoft infrastructure. In Microsoft Cloud, the only unit of organizing users in a group is Azure Active Directory group. So basically what you need to do is to add those users first into the group. No, you don't have to add them manually, but basically when you add your user, when your team owner, let's say you guest user to the team, or any other user, doesn't even have to be a guest, it's going to be propagated all the way to the top until this user ends up in your Azure Active Directory group. So what happens, the user is the Azure Active Directory group, you can see that user then immediately being as a member of Office 365 group from your Office 365 portal, because those tools are basically the same. And then at some point of time, you are going to see it in the team. So now I said at some point in the time, because this synchronization 3 months ago, I would tell you, is taking up to 20 minutes because the user store in Teams is a separate store and is being synchronized with Office 365 groups and Azure Active Directory groups. Now, Microsoft has prolonged the synchronization periods up to 24 hours. And yes, I have had a case. I'm helping the high school of my son set up teams and implement teams there during these times. I have seen that users have taken up to 24 hours to propagate. Actually, when they are added to the team, that they are propagated all the ways in the both directions to the Azure Active Directory and back to the teams. So yes, Microsoft to reduce some of the burden they have on their infrastructure and servers right now, because they get like 1000% of increase of the usage of the teams in the past few weeks. They have increased the time interval where this synchronization takes place. How does that all do? How does this all looks like for the user? So basically, what happens here when Tony, who is owner of a group, wants to invite me to a group as an external member, as a guest member, what happens is Tony sends an invite. The first check, which you see here, is to check can those members at all be can we have guest members in Azure Active Directory at all in the groups. If that answer is no, this is basically immediately where this operation is halted and nothing happens. If it's yes, the next step is basically the system is checking. You remember those two check boxes in Office 365 admin settings. If Tony can add people to the group, if yes, then we are going. Then the invite is sent. This famous email that you get when you are invited as a guest member, and then basically you authenticate as a guest member. If the authentication is passed, then we will check if SharePoint Online allows talking to the files, and if the user can be adding apps, tabs, and bots and stuff. If the authentication fails, well, basically we need to restart the process. Once this has happened, the next authentication goes basically in a very similar way. The user authenticates with Azure Active Directory. When I say authenticate with Azure Active Directory, it basically also means authenticating with Google to Azure Active Directory if the Google provider has been chosen in this scenario. I'm just talking about edge scenarios here. And then, yes, then we check again if Office 365 settings are there or have they been changed in the meantime. It's fine, authentication went through, and then we check again all the features and permissions features which we can have or not have. As I mentioned before, it can take up to 24 hours. So if you add 500 people to a team, please don't expect this to happen immediately. That can happen really long, maybe longer time periods. So what we have here now, let's see, once we have this all set up, we have all the checkboxes ticked, everything works as it should. Let's see how does that look like from the point of the teams owners and teams admins. So I can go here in teams and say manage teams, and I can go here and see, okay, those are all the teams which I have. If I would go here to the secret project for domination team, if I open this one, I see who else is member of this team and on which level. Besides myself, I've got Bonovox, Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, but I have got also a few other accounts. I've got my other Azure Active Directory account. This is basically my primary address. I have got my Office, my Live account, which is basically my Outlook Live or Hotmail, however we call it account, it's there. And I have got Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber is a hipster, so he's not using proper authentication methods. He has got a Google account here. Basically, this is how we see them here in the teams, how Teams admin sees them, how admin of the teams, but also how, for example, when I say here manage team, how team owner in this case sees them. So this is basically all we see here. We can see here that owner can change member to owner only other people from our tenant, but guests cannot be team owners. They can just be basically team members, and team owner can basically kick them out of here. When team owner kicks them out of the team, basically saying, Justin Bieber, we don't want to have you anymore, he is not kicked out from your Azure Active Directory as a guest. It just means that he's not here in the team, in the member of this team. If we go back to Office 365 and click here on users, we basically see the very simple users, and then we can also see here groups. And when I open board domination and the member, I'm basically getting the same information here from the Office 365 level. Where it really gets interesting is if I go now back to Azure Active Directory here as I have, and if I go here to my users, those are all my users here. I'm going basically now to take a look at some of those. Let's say Justin Bieber. I'm getting all his information as a user, but what is very important and interesting for me, you see here his source. It says it's Google. So if I have added a Google provider as one of the providers which I can do that, I can definitely add people from Google. How does it work? Let me disconnect myself again. You see, I'm now in my Gmail. I'm logged in with my Google account. And with, when I say here, hey, teams.microsoft.com, right, okay, I'm only logged in, so I'm being thrown back into the Teams immediately. If I would not have been logged in, I would get standard Teams login. I would put my Gmail address, and it would change to the Google login. Then I would do a normal Google authentication, and I would be in Team, and I would be basically able to do everything here I want to do. So this is where our users are coming from, our guest users are coming from, and how we can do that. Now, as I promised you, I will be showing you some PowerShell how to basically do that, since you don't want to go always as an administrator go through all this option. So I'm going just basically to copy this line of code here. I'm already registered, I'm already logged in here, so I'm just going basically first to say get Teams. This is from Teams PowerShell. I'll be getting all the teams here. I've got my group ID. Remember, groups teams are based on groups. So if I just paste this here, basically give me all the users from this team where their role is guest. So I'm getting all the users here, and I'm still getting my primary account, which is a guest account here. I'm getting my live account, and I'm getting Justin Bieber via Gmail. So this is one thing to get those guys here. The next one is basically to audit those guys. So now auditing is a very interesting question with Microsoft 365 and everything. You have got two auditing portals. You've got the old one, which is missing some stuff but can create alerts, and you have then got the new auditing portal, which is in new compliance center. The old one is in the old protection center, which is basically being deprecated. The new one has some more features, but has no alerts. So I'll just tell you straight, if you want proper auditing, go back, listen again to Eva's session and buy SysKit Point. But if you don't, you have got this, what you this. So I'm just going to say, hey, give me Justin Bieber. Search from that date to this date. And I see here basically what Justin has been doing with me. He has been opening files, accessing files, logging in, logging out, all this. Obviously, this is a particularly beautiful user interface, but you're getting the ideas. One thing I wanted to show you, access files, uploaded files. Look at this one, created folder. This log does not give you information when user has created a channel. So what happens here, you can basically track that information to a created folder, because each time a user creates a channel, a folder has been created and sharing the background SharePoint library with this, so that user basically can you can track when this has been changed. So this is how you can basically look what your guest user is doing there. Why would you look this? Well, you have a guest user in the very important team where very important crucial data is saying, and it might be your partner, external user, whatever. And just before his contract finishes, buzzword Edward Snowden, he downloads very important files from your tenant and sells it to whomever. So this is something that you basically want to somehow know and to prevent, and that's why this alerting is actually a very nice feature. But as I said, it's not yet available in the compliance center. The other way, you guess how you can do this, is basically to use the Exchange PowerShell in this case, and to use the following. I'm going to just say search unified audit log, and right, I'm going getting a lot of information from PowerShell. What my user has been doing is basically the very same information I have got in the log itself, but this is just a bit more info, a bit more details. As I said, this is pretty. Yeah, it's not the nicest thing. It's not the easiest way to browse through this information. If you need the proper auditing, take a look at SysKit Point. This is how it's done properly. So with that, we have got 1 more minute, and I have got no more slides. This is the script I have been using here. So this is basically the script you can be just copy pasting later from the slides. You are going to get this. And I'm basically finished right on time. I don't have this famous thank you very much asking questions. Here's my Twitter handle slide, because I know that Tony is now going to take over and to moderate the questions.
Yeah, that was my intention. So you're not going to skip the questions, even though you don't have the Q&A slide. So we are going to go through questions, and then you can answer them. So the question from Steve is, many of our clients are individuals, not employees of large companies. Can we use external access to call chat with an individual, not just with an associated Teams team?
This is the external access. This is the first option I have been talking about. So when somebody does, when a user does not have to be in your Azure Active Directory, but that user still either needs to have some Azure Active Directory account, some Office 365 account somewhere, or to have on-premises Skype for Business account with Federation turned on, or just a normal Skype consumer account, which might be the easiest way in this situation. And in this scenario, you don't need to add that user to your tenant, to your Azure Active Directory.
So I'm going to invite everybody to post questions in the Q&A box, which is on the top right corner of your screen. And meanwhile, in the meantime, I'm going to continue asking questions, and there will be more people joining us in a couple of minutes for additional panel and discussion. So Aris, the next question I got for you is it possible to assign team policies so that when you add users to a team, they abide by those policies other than assigning policies to users?
You can create team policies, but I did not really understand the question in a way, what exactly is desired outcome here. Is it some agreeing policies? So, hey, thank you very much for joining us, or I don't know. I don't really understand the question.
Maybe this is a question that's more related to Todd's session. So maybe if Todd knows the answer, he can join us right now on the panel.
Yeah, so the Teams policies that I talked about, there is a global policy that everybody's impacted by. So if you have any normal settings, you can throw them in there and then pull people out if you want to give them more or less. But yeah, it's the top one in the list of policies.
So I have another question that also might be more related to Todd's session. And the question is, when we delete a user, how to delete his mailbox?
So, well, you probably can't tell. So there's kind of two aspects of that question, like the technical way to do it, and then like the SUE governance way to do it. The technical way to do it, I'm guessing they're probably not asking about, but that's just your Exchange thing. Probably the crux of the question is the governance bit, and that varies a lot by business as to what kind of thing, how you want that to be handled. So do you want that email to go then to their manager when emails come in, like the email address? Do you want to keep that person's email for a certain amount of time and archive it, set it as records holds, things like that? That is determined a lot by your business, what your business needs are. If you're big enough, talk to your legal department. They probably have some very strong opinions about that. And the odd part is their opinions are going to go in both directions. So they're going to say, we have to keep some things. We have to keep some people's email. We have to keep some things about some people's email. And then they're also going to say, we cannot keep anything because of discovery issues, things like that. So if the question is about the the governance part of it, talking, understanding your business and then what the legal things are. The other thing is I try real hard not to let people use personal inboxes for things that should be groups. So like if I had a company and they had accountants, I would suggest that they not send, AR stuff out as, Fred@company.com. I would have some kind of accounting email address that came from. So if Fred gets promoted or wins the lottery or whatever, that email address isn't the one that stuff goes to. And you don't have to worry about trying to save it out of there. So I hope that's what they were going for. I may have answered a completely different question.
Okay, thank you, Todd. So we're going to take a short break and then we are continue with our panel. Thank you, Aris. Thank you for joining us today.